Hey folks, Evil DM here. I'm going to be starting a new series up here in my channel, probably falling under the Roots of Evil. I'm not sure at the moment. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about comics, but not comic books. We're going to talk about superhero RPGs, such as M.E.G.S or Mayfair Exponential Gaming System for DC Heroes, a gaming system that was made in the mid-80s to late 90s. It was one of the most popular role-playing games for superhero genre of its time. It rivaled the Marvel superhero game. Maybe not as easy to play as the Marvel one. The Marvel one was more open-ended to interpretation. DC Heroes actually narrowed everything down to a number, an attribute point, or an AP as they call it. And it was originally designed for people that want a little bit more in the superhero game, want to be able to have Superman and Batman fight at the same time, but not have that different power struggle going on. Yeah, the numbers are a little bit different because obviously they're a lot different character, but this superhero system was a wonderful system of its time. I really enjoyed it. It used basic attributes, and it only used two 10-sided dice, much like how we use in the Marvel game, but it uses a different chart. We'll get into that, but I wanted to show you the couple things that I had that I'll be referencing along the way. Now, if you want to start getting into this game and you don't know where to start and you're looking for a cheap route and you don't want to steal the PDFs, you're going to get this game right here, Batman the Role-Playing Game. It's 1.5 edition of this game. I don't have the first edition of this game because I did not like it. When I started coming onto this game, I bought this many years ago at KB Toy Store. Remember KB Toy Store? Yeah, I'm dating myself. 1989, this came out. This was to monopolize the Batman movie by Tim Burton. They made like over 1 million something copies of these, and they were sold dirt cheap, and a lot of them didn't sell. And you could still get this for anywhere from $5 to $12. It's a complete game in itself. It basically takes place in Gotham. You can play Batman and his friends, or you can make up your own superhero using hero points, which we will get into in another later episode of how that works. But today is just to introduce the system and show you a little bit about the books that you can get. Now, this is the book. If you don't want to spend a lot of money, this will be a complete system for you with over 190-something pages of rules, characters, and scenarios in this book, and I'll flip through it. And this is definitely dated art because look at it, it's all the old art and styling from back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, whatever. That's how we had our books back then. They weren't fancy. But that's the book. If you want to get into the game, this is what you're going to buy. Now, if you want to spend a little bit more money, DC did come out with a full box set in the late 80s, or early 90s, I should say, called DC Heroes 2nd Edition right here. It's a great box set. It had all the rules you wanted. It actually had the 2 dice with cards. It actually put the superheroes and villains into little cards. As you can see here, there is the basic stats: Dex, Intelligence, Influence, Strength, Will, Aura, Body, Mind, and Spirit. There's Initiative and Hero Points. We'll get into all these different things as we go through on how they each work and how to build characters. But there's the Penguin just to show you. And they had artwork on the other side, so there's the Joker. I still have this in the original setting. Now, when you rolled your dice and you added them together, you would reference a large chart. Yeah, 80s and 90s were big on charts. That's how all the games were back then. Chart. To make it easy, they gave you an action value, reaction value, combat wheel. So you can easily find what you need to do as the DM, and by most of the time when you play this long enough, you'll know, and you won't even need this anymore. Hey, inside this box set, we also had a catalog, so you can buy something. You probably won't be able to get anything from Mayfair. I think they actually went out of business finally. We had our rules manual, our background book, and we had a bunch of a GM screen, and if I can get out of here. We had our read this first, so this is the quick shortcut, like you know how when you open something up, it says read me first to get started. That was this. Some adventure booklet here, and here is your GM screen. Look at those 90 colors there, baby. And this is our charts for the GM. Fun system. it is a little complex at times, but it doesn't leave anything up to question. There's a lot to be answered in here. A lot of it can be confusing to newer players. I will agree with that. But it is a good system overall and a very solid system for a superhero RPG. You can scale it up or down depending on what you're doing. And it's not that hard when you're scaling up or down. We'll show you along the way. But after that, DC and Mayfair made a third book. This was the third edition, which was supposed to clarify rules and clean things up. And basically, they needed to sell more stuff to keep themselves afloat. Whatever. But they decided, and they will tell you in the very first paragraph of this book, this is not a new system. This is just the old system with updated stuff and more snazz and jazz to it all. Because fans were worried, and it was one of the big things back then about a new system. I think this is around the time that second edition was already out and going, and most people who played first edition and basic were like, what the hell, dude? You changed everything. So they were worried about it, and they assured their fans, no, this is not changing, just clarifying, and we will get into that. This is what I will be mainly referencing when we talk about the game, other than the Batman, which was 1.5 edition, but sometimes it's easier to look things up. But I will be referencing this when I'm building and going through everything. So, but then there was one more edition of this game, not made by Mayfair, not made by DC at all. It was made by Pulsar Games. Yeah, I believe it was Pulsar. Yep, Pulsar, and they were the ones that obtained the license, and then the license was kind of up in the air at this point, and, well, basically, they made Blood of Heroes, special edition. Actually, there was a one before this, but I only bought this one because the only one I needed. This basically was their attempt to make a fourth edition, to clarify the rules that were broken or what they needed to be done in this one. Unfortunately, what they wound up doing was basically just slapping different characters in here with different art and taking everything that basically Mayfair did and didn't bother to change a lot of it. So they got caught up in a whole giant lawsuit, and I don't know. I don't like this book because of the layout and the way it's done, and it just doesn't feel like the DC game to me. No offense to those people who love this one. By all means, you could play this one. But when we talk about M.E.G.S, we're talking about that, not that. So when I'm referencing, I may pop into this book once or twice to see, because there are some rules in here that were clarified. And I know you're saying, why don't you just use that book? I just didn't like this book. I didn't like the way it was presented. I didn't like how they made some changes in here. But that's my opinion. I'm allowed to have that opinion. So we will put that aside for now. And that's all we have to say. But the game system itself, we're going to get into it. And we're going to really talk about how things work in comics. And how to build characters. And what each stat is. And how to roll up your character. Well, actually, you're taking points making up your character, which was back then kind of a new, wonderful system, because almost all the games back in the, other than Dungeons & Dragons, of course, in the early 80s, 90s, was all charts, and you would have to random roll stuff. If you go for any of the Palladium games, they were all random rolls. So random rolls was a thing, and all of a sudden they came along with this game, which you allowed to use hero points to build your character, which was a revolutionary idea at the time. So we'll see what happens as this series goes on. Hopefully you will enjoy and stick with it. So hit like, comment, and subscribe. Good night, everybody.